Welcome into the Backroads Bill Podcast. I'm Ben, and today we are going back to revisit an episode that we did back in April of 2024 when we talked to longtime North Bayite Peter Handley, who of course is a huge piece of the history of North Bay in its most formative years through broadcast, sports, his work with different clubs and organizations, his work on council and the Heritage Committee and all of those things. It was a great dive into who the man Peter was, as he was in the process of writing a novel that was going to commemorate the 100th year of North Bay that we're currently in. And of course, it was released earlier this year to coincide with the 100th anniversary, and we finally get a chance to talk to Peter about his book that came out. It is entitled Vis-à-Vis, North Bay, Indeed and Tale. And there are some amazing stories. We dive into the interviews that are in there, some of his favorite moments, interviews, memories of going back and getting to talk to some of these people who are both still living and some who've unfortunately passed away. And it's a really interesting look at the 100 years that North Bay has been through. So it's a great chat to get a chance to talk to Peter again. So we're going to get to it. But first, a word from today's title sponsor, the North Bay Regional Health Center Foundation.
Dear North Bay, you've always been more than a place on the map. You're home to me. This is where I built a life with my husband, raised our kids, and taught in local schools for over 24 years. I'm proud to be part of this community. Earlier this year, my world shifted. After living with anxiety, depression, and PTSD for much of my life, I reached a point where I couldn't keep going alone. Walking into the emergency department at the North Bay Regional Health Center was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But what I found there changed everything. A nurse who made me feel safe, a crisis worker who truly listened. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. That care gave me hope, and it inspired me to give back by supporting local healthcare so that others in our community can access the same compassionate care I did. If my story resonates with you, I hope you'll consider supporting the NBRHC Foundation. Please visit nbrhcfoundation.ca or call 705-495-8125 to give. Because mental health is health. With gratitude, Tiffany Van Meer.
Well, we're pleased to bring back on the program a gentleman who was on this podcast back in April 10th of 2024. So about, I think that was episode 22, I believe. So we've done about 80 episodes and then some since. But since then, our guest today has put out a new book, which has been a hit. It's done really, really well, and it seems to be the talk of the town at times. We'd like to welcome back into the program Peter Handley. Peter, welcome back to the Backroads Bill Podcast.
Good. Thank you, Ben.
Now, Peter, of course, you are a staple in the community, long-time sports broadcaster. You've done a bunch of work in the community. Your list is paragraphs long in terms of what you meant to this community. Now you live down south. If you go back and listen to that first episode, we do dive into your life a little bit. But Bill here is going to give us a little bit of a taste of what this book is all about.
Yeah, no, good morning, Peter. I've got the book right here. I've got my copy. It's not signed, and I hope our paths will cross, and you can sign Vis-à-Vis, North Bay, Indeed and Tale by Peter Handley. It's it's a massive book, like 632 pages, 45 edited interviews from a host of others. And it's got everything and everything, including all the photos. And so we want to talk a bit about the book, and we want to try to put it in the context of some of the backroads of North Bay and go through it that way. And I guess, Peter, the tables have kind of turned. I'm interviewing you, and you interviewed me for this book in 2013 in that series called Life Is. And I remember it was up in City Hall, and you actually mentioned to me at the time I should kind of take over some of your duties someday with a podcast. And so here we are, more than 100 podcasts of the Backroads Bill Podcast through Clark Communications. So it is. And I'm probably the only person in the book who gets to interview you as well. I was thinking about this last night. The book, and it's in the beginning of the book, Peter. But tell us about the title and how it came about, because the premise here is that people don't know about the book, and we want to tell people about it.
Well, basically, the title is meant to depict what it is. In a sense, it's face-to-face conversations between myself and a bunch of individuals. From the 1970s through to the mid 2020s. That, in essence, is what it is. They were called the early ones because they were done to be interviews. They were not done to be put in a history book. So I wasn't aiming at a history book. I was aiming at an interesting interview. And some of them transposed rather nicely, I think, and fulfilled what I wanted to do with the book. And the idea of the book, basically, I guess you could say, is to talk to people who had a role in either researching or living through or doing stuff that was important to the history of the city and its environs, and transposing those interviews into print and putting them into a book. And it came out of the Municipal Heritage Committee's podcast series, which Katie Ducharme suggested. She was a summer student on the Municipal Heritage Committee board, and said, "Why don't you do podcasts?" So we did, and then I thought to myself, "Well, let's just go back and get some of my old interviews and put them in that." And then when we decided we were, through necessity's sake, moving away, I needed something to do. I needed a project. And I said, well, why not turn this into a project? And it's a vehicle. It's not a book that you're going to sit down and read from cover to cover. I think it's going to be one that you say, well, I'd like to find out something about X or something about personality Y, and go back and look, because all of the interviews are wide ranging, and I think cover a lot of different aspects of life in and around North Bay and North Bay's history. That's a long-winded comment, and I don't think I really answered your question.
Well, it's a good segue for me because, I mean, I've said this before. I grew up in the joke shop on downtown in Main Street, and my dad played cards with Merle Dickerson, and it's mentioned in the interview with Colin Vezina. In fact, I think that's one of my favorites, and it's one of the longest in the book as well. And because he has so many things to talk about, but he really knew Merle Dickerson.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Went with him, and of course he was North Bay's most flamboyant mayor, I would say. And maybe tell us a little bit about that interview with Colin, and a little bit about Merle Dickerson at the same time, because both are characters and legends in and around North Bay proper.
Colin had a lot of stories about Merle Dickerson. He was sort of his semi-campaign manager for some of his mayoralty campaigns, and he tells a lot of great stories about. I can recall once. Oh yeah, one of them. He had an old car that he used to drag out when it came election time, and he used this old car to drive around. Not the big flashy one he usually drove, but one that showed he was one of the people. And Colin, who tells a great story, and the reason that interview was so long is because it was a compilation of 2 or 3 interviews, and I ran them together. But he was on one of the side streets, and some guys were working for the city, repairing the roadway, and Merle stopped the car and got out and talked to them, and was one of the boys, and had a cigarette with them, and commiserated with the street, and he would clean up the streets and all that sort of stuff. But one of the great stories about Merle, and I hope I get it right, Wording is very important, but and I'm not sure whether I'm going to tell the story right. Merle was the OMB was carrying out an examination of whether, I think it was the ward system, whether North Bay would go to wards or what. And Merle had stated during the campaign that he wanted a ward system. And then he became mayor and he didn't institute a ward system. And the OMB was investigating something or other. And the guy said, well, Merle, do you really believe in the ward system? And Merle said, no. And then the guy said, well, Merle, before the election, you said you supported the ward system. Why are you saying now that you don't support it? And he said, I'm under oath today. which is a bastardization of a great story by Colin, and I messed it all up just about, but you got the point.
Well, there's a bunch of Merle Dickerson stories in there, and you've got to read that chapter to be sure to understand. There's nothing really named after Merle Dickerson in North Bay, and only people that have lived here a long time and are older would know of him. But he was a people's person, and I don't want to say he was kind of like a person of the masses like Donald Trump, but he was a showman, and he put North Bay on the map a number of times through his antics, so to speak, and so he should be remembered. And that's what the book is about. When you look at these interviews, the significance of North Bay comes out. Now, I'm in the book.
Just one last thing about Merle.
Go ahead.
George Marousas has told me about his funeral. He was the last mayor of the city of North Bay to have a parade for his funeral.
Wow.
That was a thing? People used to have parades?
They paraded him through the streets of North Bay to the funeral home and so on and so forth. George told that story.
Well, and George is missed. And actually, his daughter has asked me to help with the writing that'll occur on a plaque that's going to be the park that's going to be dedicated to him. So
that was a great move by the city.
Yeah, and I've got to do that, and so I'll look forward to that. But I'm in the book, and I'm of the 45 interviews, Ben, and I'm on page 364. And
44 is 49 interviews with 44 different people.
Okay, there you go.
What was your interview about, Bill?
Well, Peter interviewed me, asked me all kinds of things. And actually, back in the time, my photo, Ben's on page 510, and there's another photo of me in my head and shoulder shot. But I didn't make the historians part, and I've written several books, but that's okay. I'm on the land section. I'm between Roy Summers, who taught me so much, and Louise de Kraling Lawrence, who lives just down the street from the park, so to speak, on Highway 7, where she did, in the Log's Nest. And so I'm in good company. So it's a pleasure to be and an honor to be in this book, because I have things to say about the Mattawa River in and around North Bay. So Peter, what do you remember from that interview with me? Any takeaways that obviously were important enough to make the book?
I had a choice, Bill. I did a long interview for the MHC podcast, historical podcast with you, Diary of Our Shared Past. That was a long interview and an excellent interview. And then I went back and found the old 2013 interview that I did with you that you mentioned. And I said to myself, Bill covers so much of the same ground, but so much more than we did for the long interview. I was going to use both, but I had too much. The book would have been 700 or 800 pages. So I had to cut out 2 whole chapters and a bunch of different interviews. So I thought I'd compromise with yours, use the shorter one, because it covered the school. It covered your growing up. It covered Wilston. It covered all sorts of different aspects of Bill Steer that the second one, the longer one, didn't. So that's why I used the shorter one. And I still think a lot of the interviews you do would be excellent fodder for the MHC series, but whatever.
Well, what's one of your favorite interviews? Not of all the 49. What is one of your favorites that really helps the book along?
That's unfair. I can't do that. I've done so many. It's just they're like kids. You dote on them when you're doing them, and when they're growing up, sort of phase, and then you look out all back at them, hopefully fondly. And to pick a favorite, I can't. There's a lot of them with great stories, and Woody tells wonderful stories in the interviews with him. And he came on Life Is so many different times for me. Um, uh, Everybody contributed in their own particular way. And it's not for me to say, is X's or Y's better? I try to get immersed, I guess is a good word, with everybody I talk to and try to get the best out of them. And so I can't, some of them tell stories better than others. Like Colin Vezina tells a great story. Woody tells a great story, much longer. It's I forget the expression about dog stories, but another one, I've forgotten his name. Isn't that awful? That's Bill, when you get to be 92, sometimes things flick away from your mind and you forget.
And that's okay, Peter, because in this particular
Mike
book,
Burke.
Mike Burke, right, the city solicitor.
Great story. The start of the Banana Land story, the start of the waterfront development, taking a wilderness area and turning it into a roadway and leading to the beach, and that started the whole waterfront development thing. He tells a great story about that and about how we got that in a span of about 40 some odd days when Mike Harris was Minister of the Environment and the government was going to fall, and they qualified for something, for some funding, and Harris shoved it through, so we got it, and that started the waterfront. And that I did not know. Mike tells a great story. Everybody in here tells.
Well, let's not lose that thought
tells a great story. Randy Sawyer and some of the Aboriginal background story, the story of the North Star, whatever it was. You see, I'm getting all confused with stories running through my head.
Well, it's a good thing.
Let's not lose the waterfront for a moment, because when I look at North Bay, and actually my Centennial project is yet to be published, and it'll be a commemorative heritage map, and there'll be lots and lots of snippets. But the waterfront probably, the railway came along and it was a railway town, but the waterfront, given that time frame, probably changed the appearance of what North Bay was. It was the crossroads of in the beginning of the two Trans-Canada Highways, 11 and 17 transportation. But the waterfront, I think, was probably a fairly. Would you agree with that? That the waterfront really changed the complexion of North Bay?
Yeah. It used to be all you could see from the water was the rail cars, and now you don't. You see parkland, and that's a massive, massive, massive change. And of course, you see St. Joe's out in the lake. That's the landmark that everybody can see and pinpoint. But it was a long story, and there's a lot of people involved with it in different aspects of it. I dug out some stuff with J.J. Blais when he was our representative at the federal level, and it's surprising just getting the rock from the Sage site, from the underground site, just him doing that, what that set off. along the waterfront, and how many people like Don King and other people who gave him credit for doing that thing, getting that part of it started. There are so many people played roles, big roles and small roles. And the last major role, of course, was Jack Burrows' role, which was costly, but willing buyer, unwilling seller. What are you going to do? We could still, Bill, we could still be arguing about that if Jack hadn't taken the bull by the horns and really solidly believed in it, had a council that believed in it with him, had a staff that believed in it with him. And although some people didn't like the cost of it, look what you have now.
Yeah, no,
it was biting the bullet, Bill.
No, it's our centerpiece for sure, Ben.
Yeah, so obviously we're now in the centennial this year, which of course means that we're 100 years since North Bay has been a town, which isn't a long time. When you think 100 years sounds like a long time, and it's not when you consider in terms of history, right? It's only one lifetime, really. And it's fascinating the amount of people who have been in North Bay, who have been here their whole life, who've been here for most of it, right? Even myself, like I've been here 30 years, so I've been here for like a third of that time. Yep. And to see North Bay
You were a come from away guy?
Sorry?
You were a come from away guy?
No, he's just a young man. He was born and raised here.
Yeah, so even to see how much the city's changed since I've been here, how it's become much more diverse, how we've seen the like different restaurants and businesses opening up, and how much it's changed. I guess, Peter, for you, when you first came here, from the time you left, what was the biggest change that you saw in North Bay during that time in terms of how the city was, the people in the city, the businesses available, stuff like that?
It became it was a city, but it had the small town atmosphere. And now it's got the small city atmosphere. As you said, diversity. It was diverse there. You had the English, you had the French, you had the Aboriginals. All that mixture was there to begin with. But now there's so much more been added, especially in the last 15, 20 years has been added, which is great stuff. It's still a wonderful place to raise a family and go to school and learn about life. It's got a lot to offer young people. And going back, everybody was a come from away for North Bay. Because North Bay was nothing in 1882. Everybody came into North Bay from 1882 on. And we, as you mentioned so neatly, it's so much more diverse now than it was. And the population was large. But I missed the small town stuff where they'd get together for a reunion and it really meant something. Have you seen that 1925 program book? Because if you haven't seen it, the program that they put together for when North Bay became a city, it's a history book in itself.
I have that book, and I was able to.
Isn't it a wonderful piece?
Oh yeah, no, and it's other than Gateway to Silverland, one of the first books on North Bay by Anson Gerd.
Anson Gerd.
Yeah, and but that program book,
but it was something, Bill, that was done by the Chamber of Commerce. It was a puff piece, but he really worked at it. He got biographies of people that are household names in North Bay's history, but 70, 80 years after they've passed, without Gard's potted biographies, all they are is a name.
Yeah, no, it shows up when they did another book called Boosting the Bay, and actually Vic Vidali, before Politics, produced that, and it was for the Board of Trade, then, of course, now the Chamber of Commerce. And that book, and again, the program you mentioned in 1925, that is a book in itself, and there's so many snippets of things that when you wonder about, they're in there. And I like the in Gerd's book and in the program, I like the references to John Ferguson, because one of the largest cenotaphs, headstones certainly in North Bay is in Northern Ontario, for that matter. It rivals some of the bishops up on the Roman Catholic bishops in the same cemetery in the Catholic side. But yeah, John Ferguson, we still don't know a lot about him. We know what he did, and we have to look back. Because you're right, Ben, it was 1890 that North Bay became a town in 1925. And my mother's actually in that long photograph that has the hundreds and hundreds of people in front of what was called, the normal school, the teachers' college along there. And so do you, anything about in your research that you can tell us about John Ferguson in any of the interviews that come to mind?
He was a hustler. And I think you could use both meanings of hustler. He from different stories, he gave away a lot of land. He gave land to the churches so the churches could get established. But that land was rock. That land was not arable land. Or good land. But he gave it to them. He had a magnificent house with terrace. There's a couple of pictures in the book of it, or one in particular with soldiers lined up on the terrace in front of. And that's a crime that house was eliminated and turned into a motel, I believe, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
But he had relations in high places, which helped. And I don't want to use the term took advantage of, but that's the only other way I can reasonably put it. He took advantage of that it was a big plus for the city or the town that he did. He was able to accomplish a lot. He was the first postmaster. He was a mayor. He was a go-getter. And that's what Ensign Gard put a little poem, I believe, in his book about, if you want something done, get John Ferguson to do it. He's a hustler. And that's what he was. He was our early Merle Dickerson. I think in more ways than one.
North Bay's turning 100. And what a time to be here. From the buzz of the Heritage Parade to sunset concerts at the Waterfront, the city is alive with celebration. And you know who's right in the middle of it all? Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay. We're proud to be a part of this milestone moment. Whether you're coming home from a family reunion, planning a gathering with friends, or just simply making the most of everything the Centennial has to offer, our doors are open. Stay in a spacious suite that feels like home, with a full kitchen to cook in, room to relax, and a space to unwind after a full day of fun. Are you hosting something bigger? Our event spaces and amazing local partners like the Grand and Stock Transportation make it easy to bring people together. Best of all, they're just steps from the action. The fireworks, the food trucks, the music, the laughter, it's all right here. Celebrate 100 years of North Bay with us. Use code Centennial to save on your stay anytime this year. Be at home with Homewood Suites by Hilton North Bay. Join the party today at 495 Oak Street West or give us a call at 705-495-3000.
It's almost that time of year. Early mornings at the rink, fresh notebooks and backpacks, and a community gearing up for another great season of varsity sports. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of it all. Whether it's finding your kid's first pair of skates, gearing up for tryouts, or outfitting your team for the season ahead, we've got you covered. Because here, we're not just a sports store, we're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to cheer you on every shift, step, and stride of the way. Visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street and let us help you along your way. Peter, when you're going in through this book and you're putting it together, obviously there are so many of these stories that like these are people that you knew for many, many years. These are stories like you're reliving a lot of these memories for the most part, or the relationships you had with these people or conversations. What was the process like for you going through this book and curating all this different stuff? And it must have been like a trip through memory lane and maybe bittersweet at times.
Yeah. I did a whole raft of interviews for the Municipal Heritage podcast. Did a whole raft of them. And that's most of the ones in the book. But I did a lot of earlier ones over the years, going back to the 1970s. And they were, like the history part that Bill wishes he was in. Like Murray did Leatherdale, Cup Gunning, and then later on Mackey and Surtees and people like that. But I thought I would be able to bring these old interviews forth to tell about people that most of the people in North Bay had never heard of, but who did research on the city, who did whatever. I got all this stuff, and I'm still working. I'm working on another book, but I've got all this. I'm a pack rat. I've been a pack rat. So I did literally thousands of interviews, and many of them I still have. So it's a case of what have you got? How is it relevant? And how do you put it in some sort of shape? And that took a long time because I would put people in one chapter and move them around. And then we had to chop out 3 chapters, which eliminated some interviews, but I'm going to be able to resurrect some of them, I hope. So it was a long, drawn out, interesting, and for me, a fascinating process of trying to. I've got a whole list here of stuff I've got on disc of people that could have been in this book, but like Lynn Johnston, for example, Monique Smith, Lucien Delane, Bill Plumstead, Jay Aspen, Don Curry, all sorts of people, and sports people galore. So it was a case of winnowing. I hope I did a reasonable job of winnowing. The book is large; it's like a brick, but it gives you something. People can, if Bill wants to research something other than Backroads Bill, he can open this book up, and he wants to find out about the Gulf Street crossing. The only thing we didn't do in the book is put in an index, but that would have taken a year to do all by itself. So if you know where to look in the book, you can find somebody's view of the Gulf Street crossing. And Colin Vezina tells great stories about the Gulf Street crossing.
Well, I can tell one.
I lived through the Gulf Street crossing for years and cursed it more times than not.
I kind of want to know, like, what was the neatest thing that you, when it came to, I guess, North Bay history, what was the neatest thing for you to write about or to experience?
The neatest thing. One that I didn't have a role, but I lived through, and was the Beaumark warheads arriving. North Bay hasn't been on the in the public eye across Canada very, very many times. The birth of the Dionnes, of course, is the one everyone will remember. But the arrival of the Beaumark missiles the warheads, was such a fascinating story. And we cover it pretty well in the book. Bud Berry tells the story about that. And just great story about the military and all that thing. And Bud tells a great story too. But they were snuck in New Year's Eve. I happen to remember because back in the day, I did a lot of jobs for the radio stations, and one of them was doing a New Year's Eve show. Back then, radio was not 24 hours. Radio ended at 10 after 12 with
It was very
Mahalia Jackson.
Very similar to TV, right?
Yeah. It used to sign off.
What did you? So super quick, because I was in radio. That's what I took in college, and that was.
Where'd you go?
I went to Canadore.
Oh, okay, good.
So yeah, didn't end up going actually into the industry because of the way that the industry is kind of moving, and I wanted to get into film, and then I ended up here doing it's kind of the same thing in audio engineering. But was it just music that was played after you signed off?
No, it signed off.
Oh, so there was just nothing. So there would be nothing
With
on the radio.
Mahalia Jackson, the sign off anthem, and where you and God Save the King, or Oh Canada, or whatever it was. That was it. Dead air from 10 after 12 till 6 o'clock in the morning.
Wow. So very similar to, like, literally the same as TV with the color bars.
Yes, yes.
When did they go into like 24/7 programming?
It was gradual. And I'm terrible with dates, Ben. I'm really bad with dates. But back then, we signed off at midnight. But I mean, on New Year's Eve, that was a special day, so we ran a program overnight. Ran a program as long as the host, which happened to be me for many years, was able to hack it. And we generally go through to 6 o'clock in the morning when the regular morning man guy would come in and playing dance music, party music, New Year's Eve. And as I said, that was unusual. That was one day a year. And again, you being young, you wouldn't remember that. But all radio stations, they had to, by license. You had to get a license extension in order to go 24 hours. So we used to play the music, and then just around midnight, Stan LeBaire, who was working the television shift that night, he was a newsman and an announcer on TV. This is when television, again, this may be before your time as well, when the television, CFC's television and CFC's radio were out on Burford Hill, out at Callander, out on the hill, the highest point of land in the North Bay area, which is why it was put there. That's the first television station in North Bay, CKGN. That's where that was built. And then when Thompson bought CKGN and took the radio station back out there. And so we used to do the dance party, and Stan LeBaire called up from downstairs. The radio was downstairs, the television was upstairs. It was a huge building. Matter of fact, the North Bay television studio was the second largest television studio in Canada for many years. The only one larger was CHCH in Hamilton. Anyway, you could drive a transport truck into that studio. So TV had the studio and everything upstairs, and radio was downstairs in the basement. So Stan called me and said, there's something going on. There's military's out, and there's the police are out, and everything. Something's going on. And we found out what it was the Beaumarks were coming in. And as Bud Berry tells the story, the newspaper guys were at parties and happened to be at the base, and some of them went storming out because it's a big story. It's a huge story. It was and it brought North Bay on the national front for one of the very few times that it's happened. And thank goodness, because usually when you get on the national scene, it's for something horrific. This wasn't. This was something different.
Yeah, because North Bay was always, as you said, being on the national stage, I remember when they had the G Summit. I think they landed the plane here, I believe, if I remember. This was a number of years ago, probably like over 10 years ago.
That's one reason why that long runway is so important to the city. You could accommodate anything. And I might add, one of the greatest resources I had, all the people that were kind enough to put their names forth for me, but Doug Newman. He's a historian for 22 Wing, and he knows the history of the airport and the airbase and everything, and he tells a great story as well, and he strings it together. He did that for years for the base, and he was a valuable resource. Everybody in the book I could look on as a resource, which is an unkind way to put it, but that's what they were, and that's why putting them in this form means that resource is available to somebody 10 years down the line if they want to find out, as Bill was talking about Merle Dickerson. There's a lot more in this book on Merle Dickerson than anywhere else. A lot of the other history books, and it's not denigrating them at all, Cup Gunning and the Kennedy book, they went back, and we now don't realize how important the Nugget was to the city. The Nugget Files is North Bay's history, and they've dug through the Nugget Files, these historians, and would take minutes of council meetings and so on and so forth, which is great to have. But maybe they weren't able. They didn't get the views of people the way some of others like Guard did.
So let's talk a little bit about the future. So obviously North Bay is 100 now. When well, I won't be sitting here, but let's say in 200 years or in another 100 years, when you're talking about the 200th celebration, where do you think that North Bay will be in terms of expansion and how you think it might be different, or any sort of the evolution of the city?
Oh, some people did that when I interviewed them in the 70s. Some folks actually made predictions. Hartley Trussler, for one, and a couple of others made. They thought, I think Bob Studdo maybe was another, I'm not sure, but they made predictions what they thought the city was going to be like 20 years down the line, and they were grossly exaggerated. I mean, I think when I arrived in North Bay, there was 20,000. And then 20 some odd years later, 30 odd years later, it was 50,000. But people were talking about 75,000, 100,000, so on and so forth. I think the size it is now, the 50 to 60,000 area, is good. I mean, we had people predicting hover cars and everything else, and flying from Sturgeon to North Bay for, but to living in Sturgeon and working in North Bay. So I as long as it grows gradually, the worst thing it could do would be for some factory to come into North Bay, and this is just my opinion, for a huge company to come into North Bay and expand the population by 20,000. I don't think that would be healthy. I don't think that would be good for the city. Right now, the city's got everything anybody would want, and it's still relatively safe. It's still relatively sane. Huge expansion, I don't think would serve the city well. Maybe up to maybe up to 70, 75,000, but I would hope it would not get any larger than that, other than unless you're talking about 100 years' time. But I don't know. I saw it grow, and I saw it grow relatively gradually and healthily. So I'd hate to see a huge expansion, because that would just, well, that wouldn't be North Bay to me.
Yeah, we kind of saw a bit of that in COVID, though it was more the surrounding areas. We saw a huge growth, I think, in the Powasans and the Corbeils and the Calendars, et cetera. We did see a large influx of people coming up. I noticed it a lot in the driving. It was funny when my brother-in-law, who's from Kitchener, when they would come up, he would drive like you would down south, which is very aggressive and to the point, which is how you have to drive down there. You have to be very direct. And then up here, if you try to be direct, you're kind of not seen very favorably. A lot of people aren't too happy. Yeah, exactly.
You still can get where you are, get where you want to go relatively quickly and easily, without being aggressive.
And now I've seen that a lot. Especially, I have a cottage out in Bonfield, and I've noticed people on that highway driving a lot faster than what it used to be. So it is a very interesting thing to see where North Bay will be in the coming future. So as we kind of wrap up,
I think its savior, Ben, was the fact that it's not a one industry town.
That's fair. That is
Northern
true.
Ontario has been plagued, and that may be that may be a pretty strong term, with one industry towns. And when that industry either has a serious downturn, then the whole community suffers. Sudbury's a prime example of that over the years, with the ups and downs of Inco and so on and so forth.
Happened to Cobalt.
They survived, but it's been difficult at times.
Yeah, like that. Now that you say that, absolutely, because we obviously trains, but when you look at the way that trains are going, like that industry is not where it used to be back in its prime. Of course, we've got the military. We have mining, which is probably the biggest industry in town. It's when you say that, it is true. It's a very faceted town, I guess you would say. I don't know what the exact word is for it, but there's lots of different industries that are making huge impacts here.
Right. And their railway decline was not like here today, gone tomorrow. It was decline over time, and then the military came back, and then with Woody's great story about saving the base, that was very, very important for the city. So I don't know. We're sort of prognosticating a little bit. To me, I'm North Bay is my home. That's where I worked and where I made my reputation for the most part. So I have a fond affection for North Bay and its people and its institutions. I served on many of those institutions, and well, anyway.
Yeah, and as we wrap up, of course, you've been a big part of city council. You were a big part of you really had your foot in the community, as you were just mentioning. Let's maybe just wrap things up on any future projects you can talk about, or what's the next steps for you?
I'm working on another book, but this would be mainly sports interviews. I've done some sports essays because I was involved with sports in North Bay with the Hall of Fame and with football and fastball and hockey and broadcasting games and all that sort of stuff for decades. So I've got some sports essays done, and I'm doing some transcribing some sports interviews, and I hope, if all goes well, and you never know, I'm hoping to put another book out, Vis-à-Vis 2, but this would be basically sports and then some. Maybe take some of the ones that I had to leave out of Vis-à-Vis 1 and put them in Vis-à-Vis 2. I don't know. It's a project that I'm working on, but as you move along in life, you know your energy level is not perhaps what it used to be, to put it mildly.
Well, for you to be able to do what you do at your age is remarkable, really.
I cannot complain. I complain all the time. We all do, you get up in bed, you make your bed, and then you're ready to go back to bed again, sort of thing, but I have nothing to bitch about. I'm extremely fortunate.
Yeah, no, and the book, and I'm going to hold it up again here, is a wonderful compilation of so many stories, and it's a worthy read.
Well, Peter, it's an absolute honor having you on again. Obviously, you have such a depth of knowledge of the city and what you contributed to the city, both on the sports side, on the political side, and everything in between, and now from a historical side as well, and putting together. So highly recommend people check out the book. You can grab it at I believe it's at the North Bay Museum. It's on their website for $30.97, and it
It's at the North Bay Museum, and they're running short of copies, and there are also copies available at the Calendar Bay Museum.
There you go. Well, thank you once again, Peter, for joining us, and thanks again.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Bill.
So I'd like to say a big thank you to Peter, who's always willing to jump on. We had some tech difficulties, but we figured it out. So it was all good. It ended up with a great conversation. Again, it's always fun to chat. I've talked to him a couple of times now, both on and off camera, and he's always a joy to talk to, and just a wealth of information, and is sounding and looking fantastic. And of course, always looking forward to more future chats with him, any of the new projects that he wants to work on, all that kind of stuff. Very excited for that. So if you enjoyed today's episode and you want more episodes of the Backroads Bill Podcast, you can find it on your favorite podcast player. We are available on Spotify, Apple, any of those audio platforms, as well as the video version is available on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel. And of course, audio, video, all of that stuff is available on northbayecho.ca, where you can also see a bunch of other great North Bay and area podcasts, including our core shows, To North Bay with Love, Echo Essentials, and the Echo Sportscast, as well as our newsletter, Echo Essentials, which comes to your inbox every single week. A great way to curate all of the things happening on our network, as well as some of the great news happening in and around the North Bay area. So that wraps things up for us. Don't forget to like, subscribe, share with your friends, and we will see you next Wednesday for another Backroads Adventure.